I'd like to welcome everyone to the Neufeld Institute's weekly panel on parenting in a pandemic. The Neufeld Institute is about applying developmental science to raising children, parenting them, teaching them. But how are we to do that in the middle of a pandemic when everything seems to have changed? I'm Gordon Neufeld. Joining me to help answer your questions are two of our Neufeld Institute faculty. Dr. Deborah McNamara is author of Rest, Play, Grow, Making Sense of Preschoolers, as well as the children's book, The Sorry Plane. And she is joining us from our home in Vancouver. And Tamara Strijack is our academic dean and co-author of Reclaiming Our Students About Emotional Health in Schools. And she is joining us from her home in the Cowichan Valley on Vancouver Island. And she is also the one that is reading the questions into us. And so I'll pass it back to you, Tamara.
All right. So we're going to start today. A lot of the questions that were coming in are related to a lot of the movement that is happening now in many of our provinces here in Canada and in many countries, where we're trying to figure out what is the new normal here? What are the steps? How do we do this gradual reentry? What does normal look like anymore? What does school look like? Some provinces, Alberta, Quebec, are starting to look at coming back, at least for some, coming back into the school, but with all of these new measures in place. And so there's a lot of questions, a lot of concerns coming up with that. And one of the questions was, this one came particularly from a woman in Alberta, and who temporarily lost her job, and with the schools being closed, just asking that question of, how do I help my children with the scary times we're living in? And how do I provide reassurance to my children while I'm scared and uncertain as well? And I know we've talked a little bit to this in previous panel Q&As, previous sessions. But her question is more specifically to now we're facing, there's more fear, there's even more fear happening as the provinces are looking to start opening up and looking at what this new normal looks like. And so now is something different when we can feel like we're there at home and we're isolating ourselves. But now how do we deal with that and the fears that are coming up for children and ourselves as we go back into the world? Big question.
Well, we certainly all have different levels of alarm, and certainly different levels of alarm will come out concerning this as well. And all various levels of risk tolerance. But the question bears repeating, even though I believe we focused on this last time, is that the primary thing to realize is that when we are alarmed, our responsibility, first of all, is to translate our concerns to children not as alarming things, but simply as scripts to follow. What rules you have in place, what you would like them to do, the scripts that you have, what they can do. This includes all big, scary things. The possibility of being kidnapped, the possibility of an earthquake, a fire, all these things. We live with all of these dangers all the time. So this danger isn't different in that way. It is different in the sense that we're all sharing it at the same time, and we're all having to respond to it in a different time. But it's not different than living with things that we can't control and that we really don't have any control over. And so it takes some thinking, in a sense, to not simply allow one's own fear or to blurt out one's own fear or one's alarm or that's scary or I can't handle it, but really to think of what scripts that we want to translate there. And the other very, very important thing to remember, and again, I think we've touched upon it probably more than once, but it bears repeating, is that the child's sense of safety is granted from a sense of being in relationship with you. And so when they are in relationship with you, when they are depending upon you, when they're close to you, they feel safe. Whether they are safe or not is another story. They are, they experience that safety, and that provides them with a bubble in which they can function. Now, I wish we all had that. I wish we all had that experience. This is one of the things that religion, faith provided in past times. We've become a secular world now, is that there was a sense of safety. It's when you're around a matriarch, a patriarch in the family, even though they can't control anything, that there's a sense of safety. I wish it was for everyone, and everybody could find that place in which they had that sanctuary of safety in our world. But many of us don't have that place. But we still must remember we are that to our children. That is a place that we are. We are that bubble of safety, and that's far more important than anything that has been said. We don't have to spell out the dangers in our world. They exist all around us. They always have, and they always will. Sometimes we have these new ones, but we are the source of safety rather than we have to make them feel safe. And where we are concerned, we need to translate that into scripts.
I think what I would add to that is, yeah, like the bubble of safety is so critical. I mean, it's really the key for leading them back to school, back out into the world. Anywhere you want to go is in the context of relationship. I think as a parent, because things are changing so much and there's so much futility that we're facing with not knowing what's around the corner and the uncertainty that exists, and everywhere in the world doing things a little bit differently, is not to get too ahead of ourselves, like not to look too far in the future and just kind of take the information in small pieces so we can actually process probably more of it, and to make decisions in the best interest of our kids with the context that we find ourselves in. Um, I think the other key thing, and I think we've pointed this out before, and it's really critical, is that there's a difference between saying, and it's a very important distinction, and saying you will be okay, which we can't guarantee, with to the other side of that, which is I will take care of you. And the
Mhm.
message is I will take care of you, not that you'll be okay. We can't guarantee that. And any child with half a brain will look at you and probably feel more insecure because they know that you're just pulling one over on them. You can't make them feel, you can't guarantee that. But what you can guarantee is, I will take care of you. I will be here. I will take care of you. And there is security in that. Some kids may see the nuance of that, but you would have to dance with that as well with your child if they had that insight, and to make sure that you would convey to them that I don't send you anywhere that I don't think you can't handle, or that I don't think is good for you. And sometimes we are facing really hard things. You ask a parent who's gone through a divorce who has to turn their child over to the other parent if they disagree with the court's decision. We have to do hard things sometimes, and the best way to do it is to convey faith in your child that they can handle it, that you will be there to take care of them, and then send them off. You can have all the doubts you want. You can share that with as many adults as you want, but in front of the child is to take a strong alpha stance, and I will take care of you. I'll be waiting for you. And, you don't have to look too far ahead. We don't know the answers. We don't know the answers. We'll tell that story later. So don't, oh, that was the other part, as I was going to say, is don't get caught up. I find when children are alarmed, they ask you a lot of questions to know, to get certainty, as if certainty would give them some security. And they'll be really on you for, well, what's going to happen? What's it going to look like? Who's going to be there? Will I, it's going to be different. And they're trying to orient to the fact that they're trying to, orient to make themselves feel safe. And if you get caught in that trap, and you pretend, or you try to convey that everything that's going to happen when they go back to school, daycare, wherever it is, then that can actually lead to the child feeling a little bit more insecure, because the security isn't in the details, it's in the people that you're going to turn your kids over to. And things will change in those environments, and change very rapidly. You can't possibly know how they'll do all the social distancing things in those contexts. So to orient them to the adults and not the details, and to help your child. I know you have got lots of questions, but that's what your teacher's for. She's got all the answers, and I know she's got more than you'll need. And just put faith again into the other adults that are going to take care of them, and not get caught in the spiral of all the questions they're going to have.
Yeah. Well, I'll just add in, I want to actually bring in a couple of their questions that to me are related to this. And that was a question about how do we ensure the mental health, the emotional health and wellness of our children right now. Some of them were asking about their 5-year-olds, some were asking about their adolescents. And it seems that, this is a big piece of it, is providing that safety in that relationship with us. And then the other side of that is that coming alongside their emotions in this, coming alongside that they are worried and acknowledging that, yeah, I see this, that you're really worried about this. So often we try to like make it better, or we try to say, you shouldn't be worried. And I sometimes catch myself doing that. And it's because I don't want them to be. However, the reality is they are worried. I hear you're worried about that right now. I hear you're concerned about what school is going to look like. It's hard when we don't know. It's really hard. It's really hard when we're scared. When things feel really uncertain, that's hard. And so rather than trying to fix that, it's also that coming alongside that because when we can come alongside it, they don't have to resist it as much, or it doesn't get kind of displaced somewhere else in some of these sort of more alarming tendencies that can kind of leak out everywhere else. So if you want to add anything to that piece.
Yes, there's lots to reflect.
I'd like you to come alongside me, Tamara. I'm going to come over and tell you all my troubles. You can come alongside me. I was enjoying that. So lovely to have someone listen to your troubles, your feelings.
Yes, again, emotional health and its derivative, mental health, is not about not being affected. That's a double negative, but I didn't quite know how to say that right at that point. You're stirred up and you're agitated, and as human beings we're meant to be frustrated, and there's no such thing as negative feelings. They all have a place. We're meant to be stirred up, we're meant to be affected, and these situations are tailor-made to affect us whenever we face separation in any way, shape, or form of what we're used to, of what we're familiar with, and so on. They stir us up. And there can be even very, very big stirrings, so much so that sometimes we call them traumas. They can be big stirrings, but the emotional, our emotional health really has not to do with how affected we are, but whether it's okay with us to be affected. The more permission we can allow ourselves to be upset and affected, and our children, and messy, and emotional health is very noisy. It's not quiet. It's very noisy because you're allowing yourself to do this, you're blurting it out and so on, and naturally younger children will be more impulsive at this time. But if there's one key to it, it is in having times set aside through a stressful time when the sense of togetherness that you can provide, or the emotional playground you can be together, singing together or reading a story together, whatever it is, allows the safety of the feelings to get back. You'll have a sense of this with a child when the feelings return and the feelings come back, even if it was scary about more. I was, it just, the feelings come back, and that's what they're meant to do. And if they come back from time to time, our feelings will take care of us. That is what we're meant. That's that's exactly what it is. So building in those rituals, those times, not letting the chaos to lose those precious times of togetherness. And each child may need to have it a little bit differently, but the precious times, be there togetherness or an emotional playground for how they respond to in a story and music and in reading and crafts or something like that, where the emotions can return. And that really is the core of it. That is the core of it. You know, when you think of what is the key to emotional health, it's that it's not what happens to you. That isn't that, because big things can happen and so on. So it's not what happens to us. It's the key is in this in being able to our feelings to catch up with us every now and then, and that's really what they need to do. And as long as they do that, they, you know, all will be okay emotionally. Not all may be okay in our world, but all will be okay in our emotional. And if our emotional health is good, our mental health is simply, again, a derivative of that. And so the foundations will be there.
Yeah.
I was going
But,
to
oh, go ahead.
it was such a beautiful answer, Gordon. I was really enjoying listening to you through that. It's and what strikes me is just the deep faith that is needed to trust our emotions, and how we don't culturally do that. We don't have a lot of space for that. It's something we push away. They get in the way. They're the nuisance things. You know, your frustration comes up when you got work to do. You're alarmed when you need to get moving. You know, there's stuff to get done. We wish things would go away. We get scared. And how much there needs to be faith that emotions have intelligence in them, that emotions are messengers to help us, that we don't always understand the wisdom in the emotion, and that might take a little bit of time, but that these weren't sent to hurt us, these were sent to help us. And I don't think culturally we've had those understandings, and this might feel a little bit new to people and a little bit scary. As you have said before, you know, we get scared if we give something an emotion an inch, it takes a mile. And I think that is very true, is that to have a relationship with your emotions is a bit of courage and a little bit of faith that there is a way through this if we give it some space and some expression.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the opposite. Because if we
Yeah.
give it the room, it won't take up as much room.
Yeah.
I think we're afraid of it. And yet, if you give it the room, it's, I can't, you know, time and time again, I go, oh, yeah, right. Of course. If I make some room for this, it's not going to come back and bite me because it's being pushed down and, you know, in my children and in myself.
It's like when we don't, I mean, if you think of personification of emotions, when we don't give them room, we don't give them space, and we don't invite them, they get a little bit disturbed. You know? Like anybody would get a little bit disturbed. And so, you know, the best place is just, they belong to us, and
Yeah. Yeah.
let's make some room. Let's make some room and some space for the feelings to catch up with us. Yeah.
Well, and related to this, I think we were just talking about frustration. And I know that I think many people are experiencing this. And this is one particular mother who has a 6-year-old son who's started to become very aggressive over small things, trying to hurt her, trying to overturning chairs, just being very aggressive. She said there was always a history of him getting angry quickly, but this has really escalated during this time. And here's just an interesting note here. She says, last week he was crying a lot, saying he was worried that I, his mom, was going to die from the coronavirus. I tried my best to reassure him, but this week he's a ball of anger and frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips to deal with the physical aggression?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you're not the only one. There's a lot of frustration going around, that's for sure.
Yes. I think many of us can feel this fall of frustration in us, and a 6-year-old is more transparent. And so when he got this idea that bad thing can happen to somebody that you care about, then that is the source of a lot of attachment frustration. And when he lost his tears about it, when it was no longer upsetting, or maybe even lost that's what it was about, it often does, it just, frustration is still inside of you, and you feel like hitting or smashing things or yelling at things or having a tantrum or something like that. There's thousands of ways. Every child has their own bent in terms of this frustration, and he's not quite old enough yet to be able to manage that frustration. He doesn't have mixed feelings. So when his impulses are there, it doesn't occur to him that he'll get into trouble or that he loves his mommy, doesn't want to hurt anything. And that takes him a while to grow in that part of the brain. And he's a bit early for this, for that. Making sure that when the attacks happen, that you don't put focus on the attack, but rather than just simply the frustration that underlies it. You're very upset right now. If it feels like hitting things or smashing things again, just normalize it. And always when you normalize it, if you have to throw an infraction flag because he's done something wrong or whatever, if you have to do so, yeah, that's fine. But always make sure that you also give the message that your relationship is strong enough to take it, because that's what's spooking him in the first place. Is something bad is going to happen to you and he's going to lose you. So don't let his reaction to that reaction cause yet another reaction that he fears even more he's going to lose you. I hope I didn't lose you in being able to say that, but the fact is it can create an escalating cycle, and that's what you want to stop. Is I'm still your mom, it will be okay, we'll get through this, and it's my job to help you find a way of getting that frustration out. The basic approach is just simply to understand your child is frustrated. And if you take the kind of attitude is, I see that you're very upset, this isn't working for you, you're frustrated right now, that frustration needs to come out, here, let me help you. If you take that basic attitude, you'll find that it's a lot easier to be able to help do that. I'll let Deborah maybe speak to some of the ways of doing this. But the other thing to really remember is that he's having to adapt to something. He's having to adapt to a whole new reality, whole new insecurity. Part of it is developmental. If he didn't come to this conclusion by this time, there'd be something wrong. Is that we all realize that bad things can happen to those that we love or that are taking care of us. And so this is spooking him. Now, generally speaking, he needs a little bit more room for sadness generally. That will be really important. So wherever he has room for sadness generally, that to make it easy for him to find his tears about the things that he cannot change, it will tend to reduce the amount of foul frustration that is upchucking on him right now. It will help, but uh, I'll let Deborah fill in some of the cracks on that one. And
Oh, well, this is such a hard dance, isn't it? Sometimes when your child's so frustrated,
yeah,
and if throwing things is so provocative, sometimes it comes out of the blue. And wow, our own emotions and our own frustration can get going. And so, as you say, Gordon, it's important not to react from that place as much as possible, and to realize that instead of seeing the child as misbehaving, as being at the root of this all is frustration that's turned foul, and to keep your eyes on that and try to wiggle and work and dance your child out of frustration and into sadness or into disappointment or maybe into play. One of the ways you could get ahead of a problem like this, where the child is surprising you, it's hard to keep your alpha, especially if you get hurt sometimes, but we want to, is maybe to try to get ahead of the problem a little bit and invite some frustration each day. What would frustration play look like? Well, it's building, destroying, changing, transforming in some way, altering the shape of it. It could be fixing, it could be lots of different things. Sorry?
throwing things and
Throw, oh, okay, yeah, you could throw a few things outside though. Just kidding. But give it a channel to run. If it's into words are wonderful. I mean, he's at an age, I would imagine if I could talk to you in person, I'd say, what are some of the foul words he has? Idiot, stupid face, and to get the frustration out into verbal stuff, and instead of focusing on, okay, that's not a nice word, yeah, you're frustrated, you've got these words inside of you, I'm here to help. But don't go at tears directly. I think the more you say it's okay, you can have a cry, I know you're sad, likely doesn't work. It likely makes him want to do the opposite. So don't reveal your agenda. Just work around the edges and focus on frustration. And you can put that touch of sadness in your voice and just pause at the right places. And it's so hard, and I can't get what I want to, and whatever it is. And it's like a dance. It's hard to say. Every child's so different, and every child is so stirred up for different reasons. This was a big one, though. To think that something could happen to your mama. Oh,
it's a big one.
he cares and loves you. You are his world.
It
And
is.
this
It is.
just, is so huge. His brain doesn't know what to do with it, and you shouldn't, and you can't talk to him about it because this is not something he can adapt to, losing you.
And
He's gotta, we've got to work around the edges on this, and but know that this frustration is from a deep place of his attachment to you. If that helps you hold on.
I just want to add in too, because I just had this thought that it sounds like he, when you say he cried a lot, saying he was worried that you were going to die. Sometimes we think that when they're crying like that they're actually sad. But I get the sense that he was actually upset that he wasn't allowing himself to go to the sadness or the missing or what would happen. And that he was fighting it, which is why it was going into that aggression. Because if he was able to find some of that sadness indirectly, it might drain it. But often we can mistake, we talked about that in one of the sessions about the difference between the different kind of tears, the different kind of crying, because I know I can have a lot of tears of upset, but it's not necessarily because I've sat with the futility of something. And like you said, Deborah, this is way too much. This is too big. This is way too much to face. And so finding sadness around other things where you can at least get that process open, where you can at least get things moving again, where he can be sad about something else in his world, and the tears can come there. I think I was describing in one of the sessions about a boy who would skin his knee, and then that's where he would find his tears about missing his mom or his dad. That's where it would come, but he couldn't go at it directly.
The other thing to remember is that what is causing this epicenter of emotional, that's very emotionally evocative, is facing separation, which is the epicenter of all stress, is because he fears he can't hold on to you when apart, that something might happen to you. In actual fact, he's 6 years of age. He can. Now, you're not going to have a philosophical discussion with him at this point, is that relationship transcends. I will always be your mother, so don't worry about it, dead or alive, I'm your mother. This is not the time to have that conversation. But you can actually do a lot by focusing on the things of sameness between the two of you, by emphasizing your invitation for him to exist in your presence, by the sense of belonging, sense of significance. As you actually touch on and nurture the relational aspects, you will find that his alarm and frustration reduce, because you are answering the ultimate issue. Mommy, how do I hold on to you? How do I hold on to you? And that is the issue. And so you're actually addressing that issue, and again, without trying to sit him down and having a talk with him, because he's become spooked. But again, we've all been there, and we all are still there. Like, that is what spooks us.
Yeah. Well, and it's actually, that's the bringing in the answer to another question that came in around it's about a 5-year-old boy who is going into kindergarten, but he hasn't been in daycare because of COVID. And so there's some concern about how will he be prepared for kindergarten if he hasn't had this experience of being away from home. And I think it speaks to this common idea that we have to practice separation, that we have to practice facing separation. And what you're saying here, and what we've been talking about, is this idea of, you actually don't practice separation. What you're trying to do is help him hold on.
Yes.
And he may actually be in a better place when he's been there, and you can find these ways that he can take you with him, so to speak, when he does go to kindergarten.
The probability of being in a better space each year you wait is so great. Is that the developmental issues, the deeper a child develops the relationship, the more they can hold on, the more prepared they are to separate. So in this case, experience creates defendedness, which actually makes it look like the child is not affected, or it will bring the child to attach to other things, to attach to things that they can take with them, or familiarity, or to attach to their peers, or whatever it is that is there. So it will cover up the problem. In actual fact, the development is wonderfully unfolds as a child moves, usually in the 5th year, to give us their heart. Emotional intimacy comes out of this, and a child is being significant. If that unfolds well and you work those angles, then that's, of holding on. And you just make sure to put the focus on the connection. The next time I'm picking you up, when we'll be together, the next connection, the child will be able to hold on to you. And like Tamara said, it's so important. It's not the experience of having face separation. That will not do it. It's the ability to hold on when apart, and to focus on the next connection with that. So, in fact. In Finland, where the compulsory school is the latest of all, they wait the longest, they have the least problems this way. And so again, it's your child is fortunate to have had that, and you can build on that foundation of helping him hold on.
Mhm. I think we lose faith that, or we lose sight that nature's intention was to deliver a child to being a separate person, to be able to leave home, have their own goals, their own motives, their own meanings, their own intentions. I mean, you think about a child at 3 or 4, you put down a new novel food in front of them, like, I don't like that. I don't want that. I do it myself. You see all these bursts of this child, oftentimes by the time they're 3 or 4, it just appears on the surface. Don't call me that. Here I am. I'll do it myself. And it's this burst forward into becoming their own separate person that we can't lose sight of, that this actually prepares the way with good development. It prepares the way for their release of the intense bubble of contact and closeness that so typifies the young child. And so, I always think about, how do you create the kind of nest where they're just like, okay, I got everything I need. I'm on my way now. Let go of me already, woman. I'm on my way. I've had enough contact and closeness. Yes, I know you're taking care of me. All right, already. I know you're looking out for me. I know. Yes, thank you for telling me that again. It's just this sense of generosity. They can just take it for granted. And everything inside of them just pushes and says, I'll do it myself. And they release. And it's a beautiful thing when you can sit back and watch that as a parent, that release comes. And you have to kind of have faith that it's there. But I think sometimes we think that we're in charge of this, and we're not. If we provide relationship, if we provide enough play, and the emotions are there, nature's actually going to steal them from us and make them their own person. And kindergarten, that 5 to 7 shift is it's just the beginning of many beginnings. Yeah.
Well, I need to shift a little bit. I want to bring in some questions. There was a couple questions around anxiety and learning, and one just following on some of what you were describing about Finland and the waiting. One of the things that I think a lot of people have been observing is this particular mom has 2 boys, and her oldest 6, and he's actually doing better at home than he was at school. He had high anxiety. He was, indicating he was chewing his clothes, and he was acting out. And when he came home and he was home, his alarm went down, his anxiety reduced, and he had a better relationship with his brother. It was, so she's actually saying, well, maybe I should be keeping him at home now. Maybe I should be, and I think that speaks to that school can be a stressful environment, especially for a young child, that we have this idea that just because this is what everyone does, that this is okay for every child. But it's so hard for some children to hold on when they're there, when they're away from their attachments. And add to that, I've got two of the scenarios that were sent in were both children who were a bit more sensitive, who took in more of their world and would get overwhelmed quite easily. And so that too, when the alarm comes up, can be so hard to manage that kind of more stressful environment.
Yeah, but I'd like to differentiate, Tamara, between the school being a stressful environment and school being a stressor in a different way. That is, you could have the best school with the most wonderful program, the most wonderful curriculum. The child still has to separate to go to school. So that becomes the key. Now, separation is the main threat because this is what alarms us, frustrates us, and so on. So when you think of it this way, the very fact of going to school, not that school is a stress, but the very fact of leaving home. There used to be a time when the school was inside the child's village of attachment. That meant that they were basically going to culture made sure that the teacher was part of the extended family, these, and so the child did not understand that they were leaving the tribe, that the school was in it. This is no longer our system, so that the child has to leave. So it's not about how stressful the school is. The child might even really enjoy school. The fact is, it is the separation. And so that is the place. If there's two things here that are really key, just like your child who experienced, I don't have to separate, and relaxes, is far less alarmed, is more, can enter into themselves. For many children, that will be the case this pandemic. That is just like summer holidays is, they're in heaven because now they don't have to deal with the separation. They're not ready to. The thing to remember here is key is he wasn't quite ready to hold on to you or able to hold on to you when apart. So if you don't have any choice of in these matters, you want to make sure that that's what you focus on, is to help him hold on when apart from you, is to be able to reduce the separation he experiences when he goes to school. The more you can reduce that separation, the more he has a sense of connection with you when apart, the less alarmed he will be. Now, that doesn't answer the fact of the part that's actually happening from school, the stress. There may be stress that is at school as well. He may not be understood or maybe made fun of. That's a different part. But I'm saying, regardless if it was the best school in the world, with everybody being friendly, it still means separating. And that is the issue. And the other thing, when we ever face separation, if we don't have any choice over the separation our children are experiencing, always put the focus on the next connection, on that which they can bear. I'll be thinking of you at 11 o'clock. When the hours are here, we'll have some magic thoughts together. We'll, do something like this. It just make sure as that you help them hold on to you throughout this, and that part will reduce the alarm. But will some children have actually become better students when they didn't have to go to school? That's true. That's absolutely true. They will have become better students, more curious, more interested in the world around them, asking more questions, more inquisitive, when they actually didn't have to add facing daily separation in their life. And so, but most kids have to go to school. So then it's remembering, well, what was it that I learned here? What was it that I saw? It was that he needed to be able to hold on to me more when he was apart from me. That's what it is that you're looking at.
Yeah. And in the order of what's most important for a child, not to lose sight that academics are always secondary to development, that developmental, emotional health, well-being, when we get those pieces into place and we support that, then the learning comes easy. But learning it's like moving a huge rock, boulder up a hill. If you don't have all the developmental pieces in place, it just doesn't, it's almost wasted energy. So to not get ahead of ourselves and to remember that learning has a place, and it does best, it works best when it's come from a place of a child being at rest in the care of a teacher's hands, is able to manage the separation from home, has enough attention to focus on other tasks, because alarm hijacks attention in a classroom. If you're alarmed and there's separation and that's your preoccupation, you can send them anywhere, but they're not going to learn because the attention system has other orders for them. So developmental needs comes before learning, and that's for me, that was a huge shift when I saw that, and I put the world into order that way. This is the higher order of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely the priority. There's no question about it.
Yeah. just a beautiful comment in the chat that I just want to bring in. It says, since this pandemic, the amount of play I've seen with my 10 and 12-year-olds is amazing. They're singing together, digging holes in the backyard, just being with each other's best friend. They're so open to learning, which is the irony of all of this.
And play was the original school. Play is a natural school. Play is, according to play theorists, still where children learn, even in our system. Really, the real learning lies in the when we are in the play mode. And so this is if you want a child to learn, boy, and if you got the secret of how to be able to encourage that freedom to play, that their potential will unfold before your eyes.
Well, and I think we forget that the other question that's related was about a 14-year-old who's really struggling at home, both struggling before with attention problems and struggling with school, a lot of alarm. And now it's magnified. And so anything to do with anything school related, and that wall goes up. And the mother is just so frustrated because she knows all the right things to do, but she can't get her child to face those, to face anything related to school. They can talk about anything else. And I've seen this before, where there's just so much alarm around it. There's something there, and we can't get at it by pushing harder. It just doesn't work. And it strikes me that we forget that we need playfulness in adolescence as well. We need to bring play in. How do we engage? How do we find their interest in it? How do we find their corner? Because that will unfold if they find that. It will unfold, but not when it's too hard when we feel like we have to push through.
Well, that's exactly it. It's the show must go on. And that's the idea about school. The show must go on. We must push them into wanting to learn about the world, into this. The fact is when it's not working, it's not working. When it is working, it unfolds spontaneously. It takes very little work. If you've got an inquisitive, curious child, and if you've got a child with full of questions, and they'll learn regardless if they have the best teacher, the best school, they have no teacher, no school. They will learn. The willingness to take a tactical retreat, to not push ahead, but to actually take a tactical retreat and go back and say, "Oh my goodness, something is not unfolding." The learner, the inquirer, the curious one is not yet there in this individual. So it's going back, and the bottom line is always relationship. The bottom line is always the sense of being cared for, and when that is nurtured enough, the instinct to play is the next thing, and playing with attention is curiosity. Playing with problems is creativity, and all of those things generate from there. But it's retreating far enough. It's very hard in our society today. It's very hard when everybody is moving to push along, and the less a child is moving, the more everybody pushes around with all kinds of assistance and helps and trying to do this. And as you say, Tamara, no, it's forging ahead. The idea that the show must go on should not apply to anything. The bottom line of all development is to feel safe in the context of somebody who's taking care of you, to be attached to them, to be able to hold on to them when we're apart. That is, if we can give our children that, and allow that to deliver what is necessary for them to benefit more from our attempts to teach them in our society.
Yeah. It's so easy to get stuck as a parent in our agenda, and to be so full of fear, especially around school and performance and getting ahead. Will our child will our child get left behind? What if I don't push ahead? They're going to be off kilter with everybody else. What about their future? And man, oh man, does our alarm system just go into gear. But if behavior, tackling behavior is always hard on the relationship. So relationship before behavior, retreat from what's getting in the way and focus on relationship. And even though we don't know how that will bear fruit, it's relationship that does bear fruit. pushing it on always works poorly for relationship. And then you got nothing to work with. You got no relationship. Relationship is the vehicle for moving forward and getting unstuck. So always retreat to that place is always a safe bet.
Well, I've got a couple questions coming in, some that were sent in and some that are coming into the chat around alpha. And you know, I think this is a big concern with some children that are just kind of I don't know another way of saying it, running amok, so to speak, becoming the boss, being bossy, being prescriptive, taking over from a young age to an older age, right? Yeah. And this is tricky. This is tricky, right? And so this is, how do we find our place of being the answer? How do we get back in that lead so that they can, you know, bringing it back full circle to what we talked about at the beginning? How do we become that person that they can count on? How do we create that safety for them if they're not looking to us? So what does that even look like? In a couple minutes, because it's
a couple minutes.
Well, I think, you know, Gordon, one of the things that you said that's always helped keep this in perspective for me is that our job in taking care of them is to meet their needs and not their demands. And how quickly we just start responding to demand, but I told you that, or arguing with it. But really to get underneath it is, there's a need there. What's the need? Answer it from that place inside of you. Don't answer the question that they're necessarily asking you. Look deeper to what they're needing. Of course I want to help you with that. How did you know I was going to do that? I'm your mother. Where else would I rather be? Or, you know, I'm going to give you an answer. You might not like it, and we're going to get through it, and I will love you through it, and I will take care of you. And yes, we'll have cookies, and no, it won't be right now, but if you, of course you're hungry. And it's answering the need that you see in your child, but not letting them become your boss or consulting them on everything, asking them so many questions. Are you ready? Do you want this? Are you okay? We lose our alpha in all of those questions. Anyway, I'll let you jump in. There's so much to say.
Well, that was good. Thank you. And
Get you started.
I am just going to expand on that because there's very little time. Is that it's the bottom line that the child needs to experience, no matter how alpha they are, as Deborah has given us, they need to feel cared for. And they only feel cared for if you find that place in yourself where you truly believe that you are the answer to their attachment needs, to their belonging needs, their sense of sameness, and act true to that as if you are. It's coming out of that confidence where you find a certain dance in yourself, that not that you have the answers, but you are the answer to their invitation to exist in your presence, to their need for belonging, to their need for love, to their need for significance. Even though it doesn't feel like it, even though they're not looking to you that way, you act as if that is true. But it isn't about lording it over your child or winning every alpha challenge. It isn't about getting back, being boss. It isn't about all of those things. It's actually being able to get through to the child that you are taking care of them, that you've got them, that you have this. And that's what relaxes the alpha instinct, the inappropriate alpha instinct in a child who isn't, in a sense, depending upon you to take care of them. So when a child isn't depending upon you to be the answer to them, the irony is that you can't convince them to do so. The irony is that you have to actually act as if it is true. And the more you can act as if it is true, the more likely it will become true. And so it's finding that place in yourself and bringing it to the table. And that's, I'm sorry that, there's a thousand ways to flesh this out, but you've got to find it in yourself to do this. And again, it's not battling. It's not battling. It's not in the battle. It's in actually being able to feel, they experience being their true attachment needs and hungers being met, that you are that answer. But I know that's somewhat theoretical, but it still starts with that dance. It does start with finding that place in you.
Yeah, and I think too, I just want to speak. There was a bedtime question that I think you could probably repost. We could probably address some bedtime questions next time. But the question that struck me of this particular one was that the pattern that's going on right now isn't working. Their kids aren't sleeping, they're alarmed, they're up later, it's harder. And the one line that really struck me was saying, we're sticking to the same bedtime routine that we had before. And my response to that was, as alphas, being in the lead, we can decide to change the routine. When we see that something's not working, that would be the first thing. Try something different because it's not working. And
Yeah.
so don't be afraid to try something new. That's what I think. We think we have to be consistent and stick to it. We can, but we can actually change. We can create routines and rituals and structures that need to be there when we see what the need is and we see things have to shift.
Well, and it is part of it. Taking the lead is always taking a risk
Yeah.
because you're in the lead. You're not following anymore. But that is what is needed at this time is the lead, because it's all new territory. It's all new. We can't follow the old kinds of things. Everything is new. But the one thing remains is our children need to experience in us the answers to their basic attachment needs for togetherness and closeness. That remains through everything. We are the same. Our world may change, but we are the same. Our children will have the same needs. So that's it's finding that place that we can respond in that way, that gradually the answers that we seek will come. They won't be there right away, of course not, but they'll come from this place where we can refine that confidence to be the answer, not have the answers, but be the answer our children need.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage people to get support. If you are struggling with an alpha problem at home or an alpha issue, this can be quite daunting sometimes, and you can feel incredibly frustrated and well, a whole host of emotions. And I would just say, reach out and do get support. This is a big thing sometimes to tackle, and there are wonderful resources that I often refer many parents to, from the Alpha course to our editorials to whatever, because sometimes you need someone to walk beside you as a parent to try to think through these things, especially when you get so incredibly frustrated and you can feel so lost in wondering how you lost the lead. So it's not forever. You can get the lead back. My money's still on the parents. I've seen it 100 times over. Don't think you're not capable of doing this, but do get the support if you need.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll end there, and just as a reminder, thank you for your questions. A reminder that you can submit them to questions@neufeldinstitute.com, and the ones that are submitted the day before will get the preference there. You can always type in here, as many of you have been doing, our wonderful panelists who have been answering questions, and maybe just invite them, if they're willing, just to come up just for a minute and say hello, just to see our behind the scenes team here. And while you're doing that, just to wave so you can see the faces that have been answering your questions.